Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for the Active Shooter Preparedness webinar. We're actually going to begin in a little bit. The webinar actually starts at 10. Hey everybody, we're going to start in about a minute. We have some people just waiting to be able to sign in. Thank you. Hey everybody, we're going to begin now. Looks like we have enough attendees. So welcome to the Society Insurance Risk Control webinar on Active Shooter Preparedness. This webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes. We are recording this webinar, and shortly after today's presentation, it will be formatted and posted on the Society Insurance Risk Control website for anybody wishing to be able to view it. While attendees are muted during today's presentation, we do invite you guys and welcome questions. You are able to use the control panel to send them to us during the presentation, and we will address them kind of throughout the presentation. We'll also take time for questions at the end of this presentation as well. So first off, just a little bit about us. Society Insurance was founded in 1915 as a workers' compensation insurance company. We have built over 100 years of experience into specialized comprehensive coverage. Today, we are a regional mutual insurance carrier focusing on select business niches such as restaurants, bars, supermarkets, convenience stores, hotels and motels, and artisan contractors. Along with workers' compensation insurance, Society provides property, auto, and liability coverage, focusing on the small details that make a big difference. Your presenters today from Society's Risk Control Department are Adam Olenek and Brian Anderson. My name is Adam, and I have a bachelor's degree in Occupational and Environmental Safety and Health from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I was a firefighter and EMT for 5 years with 2 different departments, and I currently hold a designation of Certified Safety Professional. Brian obtained his bachelor's degree in Occupational and Environmental Health and Safety from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater as well. He is currently a lieutenant on his local fire department, where he has been an active member for over 12 years. Brian holds many certifications in firefighting, fire prevention, fire inspection, and emergency management. He is also a firefighter and EMT instructor. We also have a special guest with us today. We are very thankful to have Eric Foster joining us from the Fond du Lac, Wisconsin Police Department. Officer Foster has conducted active shooter trainings for businesses, and he has been a police officer for the city of Fond du Lac for 11 years now. He has spent the last 7 years on their SWAT team as well. In 2016, he was assigned to be Fond du Lac's crime prevention officer. The purpose of this webinar is to help educate everyone on what happens during an active shooter event. We will also discuss the actions that businesses and individuals can take to help mitigate the potential for the loss of life. By the end of this webinar, you will have a better idea of what to expect and what to do in an active shooter event. This material is geared towards business owners, insurance agents, and other professionals, but it is important for everyone in today's world. So why is active shooter training important? Because active shooter training is becoming more and more relevant in today's society. This graph is from ABC News, but their source is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This shows the steady increase of active shooter events over the past 15 years from 2000 to 2015. As you can see here, there were 20 active shooter incidents in 2014 and 2015. That's nearly 6 times as many as the period between 2000 and 2001, which was the starting point for the FBI's review. Not all of these events make the national news, but as they increase in occurrence, more and more people and businesses are affected each year. So the goal of the training is to help build awareness of things that could potentially save your life or the lives of others around you. This training should help you to remain calm during an active shooter situation, and the knowledge you will gain will increase your chances of survival. It's always better to have thought through these scenarios before they happen so you're ready to act on your plan when necessary. This data is also from the FBI and shows where active shooter events occurred between 2000 and 2012. While schools are often thought of when mass shootings are mentioned, the fact is that most active shooter incidents occur at businesses, but they can happen anywhere at any time. First off, what is an active shooter? An active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. In most cases, active shooters use firearms, and there's no pattern or methodology to their selection of victims. There can be one active shooter or multiple active shooters in the building or on the grounds at one time. In the upcoming slides, we'll take a look at examples of what happens in an active shooter event by using past active shooter events as a reference. The first example we'll go through is a very recent shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, affecting concert grounds and a resort business. Unfortunately, this is not even the most recent incident, as there has already been another mass shooting at a church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, where at least 27 people died on November 5th, 2017. As for the Mandalay Bay shooting, The gunman used his 30-second floor perch to open fire on people attending a country music festival beneath him. Police found 23 rifles in his room. Some were equipped with bump stock accessories to make the semi-automatic rifles shoot nearly as fast as automatic weapons. There were 58 people killed, making it the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. So from a business standpoint, have any of you thought about how you may have reacted if you had been present during this incident? What would you do as a customer or attendee? What would you do as an employee, manager, or business owner? These are difficult things to think about. We will have several poll questions throughout this presentation. These will help give us an idea of where people are on the topic and what needs to be covered. So, how many of you have trained employees on reporting to management if they see suspicious people or activity? You guys should ideally see a poll up now. Yep, seeing stuff coming. Great. We'll give you guys about 30 seconds to be able to answer this and then show the results. I'll give you guys about 5 more seconds. All right, so it looks like the results came in, and about 80% of you guys are saying no. So this is something you guys should perhaps think about doing with your businesses. The next example is the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida. This event is the second deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. The shooting happened at a nightclub with about 320 patrons inside at the time of the shooting. The shooter had a semi-automatic rifle and a semi-automatic handgun. Sorry about that. The shooter had a semi-automatic rifle and a semi-automatic handgun. Per reports, many of the patrons thought the gunfire was firecrackers or part of the music. So after a shootout with the local police, the shooter barricaded himself in a bathroom where this situation went from an active shooter to a barricaded gunman with hostages. In response to this particular incident, experts in security and surveillance recommended that security personnel should be performing pat-downs. They also recommended metal detectors be installed. As a bar or restaurant owner, if you are expecting a larger than normal crowd or holding a special event, you need to consider event security. Do you need security personnel or enhanced security? Should you require bag checks or metal detectors? What about pat-downs?
Adam, do you mind if I chime in here?
Sure.
A little bit. So, first time I'm talking, again, Officer Foster from the Fond du Lac Police Department. When you talk about the firecrackers, what people thought they were in the shooting itself, you hear that over and over again when these tragedies happen. People hear gunshots and they go through denial. It's a common thing our brains do. We don't like events that don't fit into our existing plans. It's scary, it's not warm and fuzzy, it's not what we like. So when you hear that gunshot, right away people think fireworks or car backfiring, something along those lines. And in this very situation, a recent one, you see people saying, yeah, I thought it was firecrackers. What people need to start doing is getting through that denial, because that denial is costing lives, it's costing time when people could be reacting to it. And when you look at that Las Vegas incident just a couple months ago, if you look online, and there's tons of videos online, if you look online and watch those videos, it's a perfect example on video of that denial that people are going through. So I watched a couple specifically that come to mind. The gunshots go off, the lights go on, and people are looking around wondering what to do. What was it? What's going on? And people are saying it sounded like gunshots. It sounded like gunshots. And then you have people next to them saying, no, that's just fireworks. that's just fireworks. There's a couple of people laughing. Another person on there saying, no, they're just blank rounds because of the way there's a delay in the sound. It just was the sound bouncing off of the open area around them. That's all denial, and that denial costs lives. So if you find yourself in one of these situations, or your employees do, need to get through that denial so you can move on to trying to survive. Because again, that denial is what is costing lives, and it's the biggest thing we're stressing right now. Step number one, people need to recognize gunshots are gunshots. They're not fireworks. And if they are fireworks, you should still be getting out of there, because something else is going on. That someone's, it's not normal to have fireworks inside of a building or in your workplace, in a church, anything like that.
Thank you. All right. So going on, we're going to actually take another quick poll. Do you think adding metal detectors to nightclubs or mandating pat-downs from exterior security personnel would make you feel more safe going into a nightclub? Looks like we've got about 89% of the votes. We're just going to give you guys a few more seconds to kind of get more votes in. All right, we're going to close the poll out. The majority of the results came in saying yes, you guys would feel more safe. I think this is a pretty common answer. About 26% saying no. I personally would say yes, so I'm kind of on that side.
Me too. For example, when you go to a Packer game, it's the first one that pops in my head. They're patting you down when you go in. I feel more comfortable, even being an officer. I'm planning on maybe having an adult beverage at that Packer game, so I'm not carrying a weapon on me. I feel comfortable knowing that officers or security are checking everybody else to make sure no one else is carrying a weapon on them either. So I'd probably side with that as well. It's that fine line that you're taking when, how customer friendly do you want your business to be? Do you want to be impeding on people's, what they perceive their rights, as opposed to the safety and security of you and your customers and your employees?
Thanks. All right. So going onward, the last event we're going to touch on occurred at Virginia Tech. This event was actually two separate active shooter events. The first occurred around 11 a.m. at a residence hall where 2 people were killed. The second occurred at a lecture hall 2 hours later, where the other 31 deaths, including the shooter, occurred. In response to this event, it was determined that crisis management should be utilized at colleges and universities. So crisis management involves multiple strategies, which include close surveillance of troubled students on campuses, installing metal detectors, communicating troubled spots on campus, providing telephone hotlines to report crisis situations, sending notifications to students and faculty via email, telephone broadcasting systems, online posting, public address systems, and text messages, and strictly enforcing laws for criminal acts on campus. Applied to a business sense, this would basically mean having an action plan in case something like this were to happen. Think about if you have a way to reach out to employees and quickly inform them that there is an active shooter at your location. Do you have a panic button installed to immediately alert the police without even having to make a call? Just something, food for thought. So let's go through what happens to us physiologically during an active shooter event. Everyone goes through a 3-step process in response to this type of disaster. And it's helpful to prepare ourselves for what that might look like and feel like during such an event. There are actually 3 steps that we go through, which is denial. deliberation, and decisive moment. Officer Foster was nice enough to kind of touch on denial right away, and that's actually the first step. So the first is denial. Denial is the disbelief in the existence or reality of things. Our natural response to an active shooter event would be denial. We tell ourselves that this is not really happening. We tell ourselves that the noises we hear are simply party poppers or fireworks, not gunshots. We tell ourselves that we're seeing a toy gun, or that's just part of a show, it's not a real gun. The faster you can get through this stage, the quicker you can respond to the event.
I would say, Adam, that out of those three, denial, deliberation, decisive movement, denial is probably the most important one of those steps to get through the quickest. When you look at the World Trade Center towers when they were hit by the planes, there are countless stories after people have been told to get out of the building, to start evacuating the building. They're calling up friends, calling up family members, trying to figure out what's going on instead of getting out, getting to the exits and start moving down all the floors. And story after story of people logging off their computers, shutting them down, grabbing their possessions. That's all denial. And again, just really stressing that you have to realize that there is a problem and get to deliberation, decisive movement, because statistics show that the people who get through those three stages the quickest and then make the best decision once they get to decisive movement are the ones who are most likely to survive.
So the next stage is deliberation, and this is where we need to remain calm. So during a disaster, there are two sides of the brain. There's really the lizard brain and the human brain. So like the lizard brain is a primary side of us, which results in a fight, flight, or freeze response. We don't want to let the lizard brain take over. We need to stay calm and stay in the human brain, which will process the situation rationally. This can be a challenge during a terrifying event. In order for us to process what is happening, we need to have thought through this in advance. So again, we need to remain calm. The human body's natural response is an increased heart rate due to the stress of the situation going on. The heart rate can get to the point where we start to get blurred kind of tunnel vision, and ultimately to the point where we collapse. Experts recommend that you utilize something called combat breathing to help slow down the rapid heart rate. Here are the steps for combat breathing so you can practice. So you just breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds. You're going to hold it for 2. Then you're going to exhale through the mouth for 3 seconds. And then hold that for 2. And then you just repeat that process. Now that we're calming down, we need to get into a mental script for the plan of what to do. After calming down, we can carry on to the next stage, which is that decisive moment.
Just want to touch on a couple of things on this slide too. The first one being the lizard brain part of it. Adam's completely correct, and that's the instinctual, primitive part of your brain. It just knows what to do. The thing you need to be looking at yourself, no matter where you are, or training your employees for your businesses, is where are your exits? Because you can actually train that lizard brain. You can teach that part of your brain to just know what to do. And an example would be you walk into a restaurant to go out to eat. If something were to happen in that restaurant, as soon as you sit down, you're going to want to go out the door you came in. When your brain's not thinking correctly anymore and your lizard brain's kicking in, it's going to go where it knows its exits are. You're not thinking of other options at that point. But if you simply look around the restaurant, where are my exits? If something were to happen, where would I go? What would I do right now? Maybe there's an exit right next to you that you didn't even see, but now you're going to be going across the restaurant to try and get out, and that could be the worst possible place you want to go. So constantly training that lizard brain, have your employees training that lizard brain, wherever they're at in that business or when they're out and about, where would you go and what would you do? When we talk about the combat breathing, that's a typical thing that we're taught day one in police academy is that combat breathing, holding it, letting it out through your nose. And what we're trying to accomplish there is keeping your heart rate low, because once your heart rate gets above a certain beats per minute, that's when you lose that ability to think completely. Back in 2013, I had a high-risk incident where somebody shot at me and another officer. I was shot at with 30 rounds from an assault rifle. And I will tell you what, I prepared. This is the way I'd respond if this ever happens to me for the 9 years before that. And when that moment happened, I went right up to what we call condition gray. My heart rate was too high. I wasn't breathing from the beginning of it correctly. and I lost my ability to think. And it wasn't long. It was a few seconds, but I had to remember to breathe. That's the only thing I could remember was from day one them telling me to breathe. And, you know, we say hold it, you know, in your nose, exhale, all that stuff. It wasn't exactly like that. It's like a, you know, just trying to hold on one more millisecond and then one more millisecond. I remember the exact moment that I could remember, okay, I'm in a bad spot. I need to move. I'm going to go here and then here, but I couldn't get there until I could control my heart rate so that my brain would start working again. So again, very important to try and start breathing at the moment you hear gunshots, that this is a problem, you know, and in the denial stage, this is a problem. Start breathing there so you don't go so far up on that scale with your heart rate that you're overwhelmed and you start shutting down and you can't think anymore.
This is a great tie-in story. Thank you. So the final step is a critical one. Once a decision has been made, act quickly and decisively. Failure to act quickly can result in you remaining in a position to be injured or killed during an active shooter event. It is important to know your surroundings when you find yourself in a dangerous situation. The faster we can get through the phases of denial and deliberation, the quicker we will reach that decisive moment and begin to take action that can save your life and potentially the lives of those around you. There are 3 possible actions at this stage. But first, let's take a quick poll one last time before we dive deeper into the material. Do you know what you should do in a decisive moment? All right, guys, we're going to actually close out the poll now. And then we'll hand it over to Brian.
All right, good morning, everyone. As you can see right now, we have 78% of people selecting fight, hide, run. Second place is avoid, deny, defend. Alrighty, we're going to go into the new acronym avoid, deny, defend, which has kind of substituted some of these other choices out there. Just like a fire drill, it is important to know several ways out of a building from your location at all times. If an active shooter situation arises and you can safely escape the building, do so. Encourage others to leave with you. Leave your belongings behind. Carrying your belongings will only slow you down. It is important to get out as quickly as possible. Call 911 or another applicable emergency phone number once you are safe.
Brian, just regarding that poll, you know, for those 78% that said, you know, run, hide, fight, don't feel bad about that. You're not wrong in a sense. Forever, that's what everybody was being trained. When I was a kid, that's what we were trained to do. Unless you've had an updated active shooter training within the last probably 2 years, I would say, everything's been run, hide, fight, including what my department was teaching people was run, hide, fight. It's changed in the last 2 years to avoid, deny, defend, and the reason for that change is that hide aspect of that. When you look at tragedy after tragedy of these happening, we're trying to learn from them what has worked and what hasn't worked, and the hiding is not working for people. People are hiding behind things that they're being seen and they're in no position to defend themselves anymore. They're not positioned well in the room, so a shooter is just shooting into a room and people are getting shot behind desks or you know, in closets, things like that. So that's kind of where that mentality has changed to avoid, deny, defend. They want to get that hide aspect out of it because we want you guys getting out of the building first if you can, and definitely not hiding. If you are stuck in that building, you want to just be in a position to defend yourself or take care of business, but always trying to get out of there and not hiding.
Alrighty, the second is going to be deny. If you can't safely evacuate the building, deny entrance to the active shooter. Stay out of the shooter's view. If you are in a room with a door, lock and blockade the door. Silence your phones, computer, or anything else that might get the shooter's attention. Remain as quiet as possible. Block the door with whatever you can find, whether that's chairs, bookshelves, rolling carts, anything like that. Here's the story of what a survivor of the Pulse nightclub incident did during her decisive moment. Leah Diana Perena raced from the gunshots as people fell around her, some tugging at her feet and pulling off her shoes. Leah Diana, who was 33 years old, saw a woman standing frozen, looking back towards the shots. This woman, standing frozen, is an example of a lizard brain response and the dangerous spot to be put in. Continuing with the story, Leah Diana grabbed the woman and they ducked into a bathroom closet to the back patio. She had tried to listen over the panic noise of the 15 people in the bathroom, telling the others to calm down or they would all die. She sat on the toilet, huddled with a bloodied group. She heard gunshots and the gunman screaming in what sounded like a foreign language. She heard the gunshots getting closer and prayed. She said the gunman never came into their bathroom, and after about 30 minutes, she looked to a man next to her and they decided to try to run. But as they got up to leave, a police officer banged on the bathroom door. The officer rushed them out through the back exit. It was only after that she was outside with the officer that he pointed out that she had bloody left calf. She realized she had been shot. Only then did the pain set in. This is due to a combination of the flight or fight response and the shock her body went through. As a last resort, and only if your life is in danger, you should defend. Do whatever you can to survive. This includes incapacitating the shooter by means of physical aggression and improvised weapons. Improvised weapons could include a chair, fire extinguisher, lamp, or whatever else is available. To bring this together, what we have discussed here today, here's a situational video that is used by the FBI for active shooter awareness training. While the video uses the terminology run, hide, fight, today's current thinking is to use the terms avoid, defend, and deny, which Officer Foster had alluded to.
So again, before you watch the video here, it says run, hide, fight. A lot of the concepts are the same, different terminology. The big thing is getting that hide out of people's heads. That deny aspect is basically taking the place of that hide. The difference being, you're in an office space, you're in a building, you're separating yourself from the shooter, not hiding. So when you get into a room, you're barricading it, doing whatever you can. You're not just going in there hiding. You're trying to make sure that you can delay them from getting into that room. The average response time for law enforcement is about 3 minutes in the nation to an active shooting event. For 3 minutes, you're on your own. And for that 3 minutes, you got to keep that door shut by whatever means necessary, and it includes your positioning in the room. Not in the far back corner of the room, not behind a desk. We want you right next to the door, not in front of the door, but next to it. That way, if rounds are going off through the door, you're in a safe spot. But also, when you get to the next part of defend, you're now in a position to defend yourself. You're close to the shooter. You're close to that weapon. You can grab the weapon. You can fight with the person. You can hit them with an improvised weapon, as opposed to being in the far end of a room where there's no way you're going to beat the speed of a bullet to try and do something. You're now at a disadvantage and in no way able to protect yourself.
Thank you. right, we're having some audio problems. What we'll do is we'll send out the link to this video for all participants to see. Businesses should contact their local law enforcement agencies for active shooter trainings. There are several types of active shooter programs out there, including one directed at schools called ALICE. All businesses are different, so the most important thing a business should do is make sure their employees are trained on what to do and where the exits are. Some businesses have installed alarms, PA systems, and even panic buttons. While there are many different options available, it is important to remember that each of these must be activated by an employee. In an active shooter situation, tensions and stress levels are high. An employee may forget or be unable to activate these devices.
If you do have some sort of alarm or announcement over the PA system, I always stress whenever I train any type of business is to have just common language. A lot of times, especially when you look at schools, things where maybe you just don't want to alarm people, that we're using code names, code red, code green, and in my school we had something called Dr. Cardinal type of thing. I know we don't want to alarm people, but that's what we're intending to do in the situation. So straight language, shooter in the building, somebody with a weapon. That way people are like, okay, it says code red, but what does it actually mean? Are we at that level of threat? Is it somebody with a weapon, or is it just somebody who's angry and maybe we're overreacting on something, and now you're getting a different response out of the people in your building? So again, common language, somebody with a weapon in the building, get out, something along those lines.
As we stated right from the beginning, active shooter training is becoming more and more relevant because of incidents that are becoming more prevalent. It is increasingly important to prepare in case a tragic event like this happens near you. Today we have covered what the mind will do in a traumatic event like this and what can be done to help minimize the risk of loss of life. There are resources available for your business to learn more or to teach your staff on how to better prepare for an event like this. We recommend using the FBI's website for information. They are obviously a great authority on the topic, and your local law enforcement can provide resources and trainings on this topic. Society Insurance customers also have access to training videos for a discounted price and samples for free. The safety video program can be found on the Risk Control website at www.societyinsurance.com. We would like to take this time to answer your questions. Type them into the webinar control panel and send them to us now. It looks like we already have a couple. First question here is how do police typically respond to an active shooter event? Officer Foster, I'll let you answer that one.
So every department's a little bit different, but generally across the board, departments are going to these new tactics that we've learned from other incidents of the first officer on scene is the officer that's going in. When I started 11 years ago, we had tactics across the nation that said, hey, if you are going to an active shooting event, you're going to wait for 4 or 5 other officers, you're going to go in, you make this diamond formation, then you're clearing out the building. And what has happened is, departments were doing that, and as we look at active shooting events, we're seeing that it's not quick enough. It's not fast enough. Statistics show that 9 times out of 10 in an active shooting, a suspect, the shooter, is actually going to take their own life. As soon as they're engaged by someone with a weapon or law enforcement, they tend to take their own life as opposed to us having to end it. That other 1 out of 10 times, police are ending it, but either way, as soon as law enforcement is engaging, these are ending. So we look at that and we say, hey, you know what, this diamond formation and waiting for people isn't working. Definitely not waiting for SWAT. That's about 30 minutes out. And when these things are over in 8 minutes, now what we're doing is that first officer on scene, they're getting in the building. They're letting other officers know which way to come in, which way they went in, and as they get there, they're going to start going into that building too. But it's quick, it's fast. When we get in there and the situation has ended, there's still more that's going on. We're probably going to be yelling commands at people, show us your hands. We're not yelling because we're angry. We're yelling because your stress response is up, our stress response is up, and you're probably not listening to everything I'm saying the very first time. So if I'm yelling, show me your hands, show me your hands, that's what I'm looking for, because that's what can hurt me, that's what can hurt other people, is your hands. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to get into a room. If there's a lot of casualties in there, We're going to ask anybody and everybody who can stand up, go against a certain wall of the room. And the people that stand up are now separated from the people who are maybe a little worse off. For whatever reason they couldn't stand up, they now need my medical attention first as we're trying to get EMS in to try and help us out. So that's typically how our response is. There's a lot of what-ifs and different scenarios you can go into, but that's a general concept that law enforcement has changed over to in the last 4 or 5 years, just learning from other tragedies.
Perfect. Got some more questions for you, Officer Foster. Are terrorist events treated or viewed any differently than any other active shooter event?
No, they're not. The initial stages of an active shooting event, again, in 8 minutes, every single one, we're treating it like that's an active shooter. A terrorist event would only just be documented differently statistically. Politics get involved, things like that. But as far as the Pulse nightclub shooting, that was deemed a terrorist event. The officers arriving on scene there didn't deem that any differently than the officers in Las Vegas, which wasn't a terrorist event. So yeah, it's all just taken. Somebody's with a weapon or multiple people with a weapon. People are getting hurt. We're going to go in and take care of business and try to save people.
Perfect. Next question. What should reception or entry people watch for as a warning? What activity or dress?
What you should be looking for if you're kind of monitoring people coming in and out of the business is anything that could conceal a weapon. Long trench coats obviously can hide some long weapons in there. Backpacks, things like that. Typically the actual dress of the person tends to be normal. So it's hard to say that there's one thing to look for just because somebody who wants to cause one of these tragedies typically doesn't want to be stopped before they get there, so they're blending in with everybody else. They're blending in so that no one's actually calling on them or they're not attracting attention, because what's the point of not making it to their destination when their whole plan is to have the most damage possible, get the media attention. That's what they're looking for in it. So obvious things that you'd be looking for is someone's coming in, you see them from a parking lot, they've got some sort of body armor on. Obviously that's the type of dress that you'd see, but typically that's not what we're seeing in active shooting events.
Otherwise, is it that odd behavior that
if you have somebody who just appears nervous more for no reason, and I've seen this on the road, not active shooter related, just something's going on with them, the sweaty palms, 1,000-yard stare, twitchy, and that could be a lot of things, but those would be some signs that somebody's stress level is up. Their heart rate response is up, and it's up for a reason, and that should be your red flags. The hairs on your neck standing up saying, hey, I need to keep an eye on this person. It could be nothing, but it might be something as well.
Perfect. The next question we have is, if you carry a permit and are armed, how do you let the police know you are a good guy when they come on scene?
That is an excellent question. That's one thing I teach in my trainings when I do them. Put yourself actually think about an active shooting situation. You're somebody with a weapon, or even me off duty. I'm in plain clothes. I've got a rinky-dinky little badge I'm holding in my hand that no one's probably seeing, right? We'll use the concealed carry permit for your question. You're at an active shooting. You've decided that you're going to go stop it. You're not going to get out of the building. You're not going to avoid, deny, defend. That's fine. That's a decision you have to make personally. It's a decision you have to live with for the rest of your life. But if you're making that decision, great. Problem is when law enforcement comes, they're looking for somebody with a gun. And what are you? You're somebody with a gun. Other concealed carry people, some of them aren't very well trained. Some of them just have a gun. Have never shot the thing in their life, right? Somebody with a gun. That's what everybody's looking for. And every law enforcement officer who's in the area is responding, not just that department. For me, it's a big thing too. Is we have officers who are in departments in Appleton, but they live in Fond du Lac. They don't know who I am, that type of thing. You've got to have some way to say you're not the bad guy. So here's what I've been telling people. I heard a great idea from somebody who said, if you're going to carry concealed in that situation, think about carrying some sort of fluorescent, something really bright, like sash, almost like a pageant sash that you can roll up, keep in your holster even, so that if you had to throw that on quick, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm saying it's an idea somebody had, you throw that on quick, it sets you apart somehow from what I would be expecting as an officer going into an active shooting. It's just a little thing to give me a millisecond to process of, okay, that person's got a sash on, and give you some commands. I don't know if it's the correct thing to do. It's an idea that somebody had, and I thought it was a good one. My best advice is, if you even hint that law enforcement's on scene, somebody with a concealed carry is on scene, and you're pretty sure that's not the bad guy, gun down, hands up, you know, that type of thing. You're verbally telling them, I'm not the guy, he went this way, you're describing it. As law enforcement, we're going to believe you, but we're also not going to believe you. We're going to say, you know what, you had a gun, I'm going to put you in custody, the rest of the guys are going to keep going. You might be the bad guy, there might be a way for them to get away, so I'm going to give information that you're giving me, and I appreciate it, as detailed as you can, where they are, what they're wearing, what type of gun it was, how many people, but at the same time, I'm going to be safe and make sure, you know, you had a gun out, we have people who are shot here, we're going to hold on to you for a little bit, so don't get upset by that, we're just making sure that we're all going to go home at the end of the night.
Perfect. I'll handle the next one here. The question is, I know children go through drills at schools, but as a parent, what is the best way to prepare them to the outside world? I always tell them to always know where the exits are, but I have one that I know will panic and freeze. That's just something that you have to repeatedly do over and over again. It's just like any fire situation, finding the exits. Sometimes you have to train in the middle of the night, sometimes during the day, but you need to keep doing repetitive training on that. They normally encourage at least monthly trainings on this just to get that reaction down in your head. It's kind of like you always drive the same route to work every day. What happens if there's a car accident? It throws you for a loop. The more you can do to try train yourself on a certain aspect of an escape or anything of that nature, the better it will be. Alrighty. We recently had a disgruntled client angry about his rate increase for health insurance. He said to the agent, I might shoot you, and left the building. We called the police and they spoke to the client. We didn't know what to do at the meantime. Should we keep working? Should we go home? What would be best? Officer Foster?
Here's what I would say to that. You know, that's where I bring up the term lockdown. Now, lockdowns are big in schools after Columbine. You know, and into even now in a lot of schools, a lot of businesses have lockdowns. Lockdowns aren't all bad. We've changed, you know, our thoughts in schools of getting people out now. You know, a lockdown was originally designed in the 90s in response to drive-by shootings at schools in LA. So when Columbine happens, schools across the country are looking for, you know, some concept, some policy, because they're getting all these phone calls and don't have an answer what to give their parents at their school. So everybody does lockdowns. That's what I did when I was in high school. You sit in there, you lock the doors, you stay in your classroom, and you're just waiting for police to come. Lockdowns are great for an outside threat. They're not great if somebody's in your building with a weapon. So in this situation, you know, somebody left the building, they're saying they're going to get a gun or they're going to shoot you after they left. That's a good time for a lockdown. I wouldn't want people going outside at that point in case that person's literally just going to their car, grabbing a weapon, coming back. So locking the doors, getting out of sight type of thing, calling law enforcement, and you don't want anybody coming into that building until law enforcement has cleared the area at that point. You know, now if it's, let's say you've seen the person leave in their car, it's a little bit different. Seen the person leave, for sure they're gone. That would be a policy decision with people, personal decisions with people. Do they feel safe? You know, if it's me and I don't feel safe in my place of employment right now because this threat was made, I'm sure, you know, if I can articulate why I don't feel safe, I'm going to go home. Even if that meant I'm going to take some unpaid time off to leave, or I'm going to use a little bit of time, I would leave at that point, because ultimately your survival depends on you and not your paycheck.
Perfect. And we have one last question. Are there different suggestions for how to help children respond? What age is this information appropriate for? And scary, but I would like them to be aware.
So my school that my children went to, at the time, you know, we're talking kindergartner and second grade, third grade, they had lockdowns at their school. And you know, teaching this stuff, I'm not a fan of a lockdown when it comes to schools. At least it's a plan in place. But what I would do is I would have conversations with them individually. And you kind of have to gear that conversation to their age. So, you know, when I'm teaching high schoolers, I'm having kind of a PG-13 conversation, as opposed to, you know, a 4K kindergartner, first grader. You know, that's a very G-rated conversation where I'm saying, hey, if something bad were to happen, you know, you're using different words, different terminology, but anything scary or bad happens in here, somebody comes in and is trying to hurt people, this is what I want you to do. You know, this is where I want you to go. I have that conversation with them in the movie theater as well. You know, you go to the movies, if you're out, you know, I've got a 4-year-old who's got to pee every 20 minutes. It makes me miss the movie, right? Well, if I'm out in the bathroom and my two older girls are still in that theater and something happens, I'm not around, they need to know what to do. So I'm training that lizard brain. I'm telling them, hey, in this theater, there's 2 exits right here, 1 or 2 exits. All theaters have them in the theater itself. Something happens in here. Someone comes in with a weapon. Someone's trying to hurt somebody. I want you to go out those doors. Once you're out those doors, I want you to go here, and this is where I'm going to meet you. Okay? You stay there until I come and I get you. Okay? Those are the types of conversations we're having, and the best way I would say your parent needs to be able to judge their own kid, and they're probably pretty good at it, and what you're able to talk about. It's just a matter of using terminology that doesn't scare them, but you want to get the concept of what to do in their head. So, we're sitting around the other day in my house, and I talked about it at my house. Hey, kids, if someone were to come into our house right now, break into our house, where are we going and what are we doing? And, we have a discussion as, different parts of the house. If you're downstairs, if you're upstairs, what exits do you have available to you? Get them thinking about that stuff without maybe even having to have this scary conversation about what the world is like now. That can come a little later on, but you're getting that into their head, training that lizard brain, so hopefully they're just going to act at that point.
Perfect. Another question that we got here at the end was, if someone makes a threat, should you bring security into the office for some period of time?
I hate to use the word "it depends" because it's kind of a cop-out a little bit, but I would say it depends. It depends on the credibility of the threat. If you have somebody you're dealing with who's a customer who lives in a different state, they make a threat over the phone. Well, I mean, notifying law enforcement of it, making people aware of maybe the vehicle, law enforcement can assist you with that, what to be watching for, that could be enough at that point. If it's a more credible threat here, obviously you're getting law enforcement involved with it, and we're going to deal with that as well. But yeah, if you think it's a serious issue, bringing security in isn't the worst idea. Again, a personal policy decision that you have to make as a business owner or manager at that point.
Well, perfect. Thank you all for coming again and joining us today. I truly hope this information has been helpful and that you are better prepared for something like this if it were to happen. We'll be sending a follow-up survey via email shortly and appreciate your feedback. We'll also be answering a few questions as well via email. Society Insurance will have more free webinars in 2018. Please watch your email, our website, and social media for announcements. To learn more about how Society can help protect your business, visit www.societyinsurance.com. Thank you again, Officer Foster, for participating and sharing your expertise. And thank you all for coming and visiting with us. Enjoy the rest of your day.